Hello and welcome back, beautiful blooms. I'm Lalinea, and today we're talking about color. More specifically, how to use color when building your house in Final Fantasy XIV. A topic near and dear to my heart because I believe that surrounding yourself with your favorite colors not only helps you enjoy your hard-won home that much more, but it will also give you a break from the landlord grays we're all forced to deal with in real life. So grab your favorite drink and I'll walk you through how I design my houses with color in mind, from floor plan to completion. And as a bonus, this reverse teardown footage will show you how I layer the more glitch-heavy aspects of the build so you can use them for your own designs. Let's go! Knowing your floor plan is everything, because your floor plan determines how and where you can apply color in your home. So let's break down this one. Today, I'm showcasing a single floor large build, which has similar design challenges that a small house does, because the central pillars force you to work within an awkward square shape. So to get around this particular problem, I built a more traditional layout with separate rooms rather than an open concept. Which, if you don't know what an open concept means, it's when you don't have walls blocking your view of the main areas of the home. Usually your kitchen and your living room. On the flip side, older, more traditional American homes chop up their layouts into many rooms, and that was more the look I was going for here. This allowed me to work with the pillars rather than against them. It also made it a bit easier for me to experiment with different uses for color, because then each room could have different techniques applied to them, and we're going to go through them one by one today. So to accomplish everything I wanted, I have one long hallway at the front of the house where the player teleports in. It connects all three main areas of the design together for easy foot traffic. To the northeast is the living room, and since I wanted a big garden window there, I knew it needed the most space, so it shoved right up against those pillars. The kitchen to the northwest has two doorways connecting to both the hallway and the living room, and the bedroom is at the end of the hall to the west, with plenty of space between it and the kitchen, which gave room for furniture glitching. And finally, outdoor garden spaces are my absolute favorite things to build, so I managed to squeeze a narrow one next to the living room. Now that's great and all, but what does that have to do with picking out colors? Simple, like I said. Your layout determines what items you can use and what glitches you can use, and both those things affect how you can use color. So let's start with the hallway, which you'll notice as we move along is predominantly neutrals, whites and browns with only hints of color. This was done on purpose. Because the hallway connects three different rooms, and each of those spaces are going to be dominated by strong colors, I needed the hallway to look good against all three of them without clashing. And white and brown go with everything, which makes this technique the perfect first step to adding color to your designs if you've never done it before. It's especially effective in this build because sticking to neutrals in the hallway made it so that when you pan the camera around, it doesn't clash with anything you see in the open doorways. This also creates a visual effect that lures people in. When you first entered the house, this is what you saw. The stark contrast of colors in the kitchen and living room compared to the hallway created depth. And depth piques our curiosity and makes us want to explore a home. The doorways act like outlines in a colorful drawing. Your focus immediately goes to them and makes your colors pop. White in general is also just really good for smaller spaces that are well lit. Keyword being well lit. Which is why I used so many false thresholds to bring in some warm sunlight throughout the day. It keeps the space feeling a little bit bigger, and the various wood tones ground the space and make the hallway feel cozy and inviting. Since I used blues and purples for the rest of the home, I added those colors through accents like the rug and the botanist desk to keep the hallway cohesive with the rest of the design. And these details really pop against all of the whites and browns. So if you've never decorated with color before, there's no shame in starting with white and injecting your favorite colors through smaller elements like these. You literally cannot go wrong with this method. Now, having said that, let's get into a room that does the exact opposite of what we just built, and instead centers around a big, bold color, purple. In case you can tell from my VTuber design, I love purple, but I can admit it's not an easy color to work with. And if you're enjoying this video so far, then please subscribe to the channel. It helps small channels like mine a lot. This living room is another example of how layout affects how you can use color. Because I wanted the hallway white and the living room purple, I had to use more item slots to make that happen. White rectangular partitions dyed lavender purple are placed against the Oasis partitions. However, they leave a gap if you don't want the Oasis partitions to peek through them. They're very thick. So to fill that gap, I used white wood slab partitions that also made the trimming for the doorway. This technique needed around 8 or 9 items to create that seamless separation. And when we get into the kitchen, you'll see I had to keep adding more layers of walls so I could use different colors there too. And that's kind of just an unfortunate fact about having different wall colors in Final Fantasy XIV. It's item slot heavy and space heavy because you have to layer walls like that. The good news is you can still do it in small houses and apartments. I've done it and I'll show some examples up on screen here. But having a floor plan ahead of time really helps making the building process for this so much easier. It's worth the time. So knowing this, why paint walls in different colors at all? Why not just stick to white and inject color through accents like we did in the hallway? It looks good and saves some effort and slots, right? Well, as a color enthusiast, let me give you some of my favorite reasons why you should consider designing with color anyway. One reason you should consider painting your walls, in particular a bold color, is it makes smaller details really stand out if you do. Gamers don't look up. So typically details like this crown molding right here you see going up would go unnoticed. But because those thin white lines are against a bold purple backdrop, they stand out. Contrast draws attention, and in this case, draws the eye up. That same contrast works for windows and doorways too, so if you want to draw attention to those, this is an easy way to do it. Another reason to go with color is entrenched in color psychology. Ongoing research suggests that different colors make us feel different things. This is why so many restaurant chains use red and yellow in their logo design, as both colors are associated with revitalizing energy and thus making us hungry as a result of that. So if there is a specific vibe you want for your house, dyeing the walls in an associated color is the fastest way to achieve that. For this house, I personally wanted it to be cozy and calming, and purple, like blue, can be both of those things when handled correctly. And it's just nice to have a room in your favorite color. I don't see purple get used very often, so I'm here to represent. We also have to talk about the truth behind white dyes in Final Fantasy XIV. Getting actual white walls is, well, expensive, unfortunately. Especially right now after Dawntrail's release. And unfortunately, from what I've seen, even after the graphics update, Snow White, which is the closest thing to pure white, has a gray undertone to it. And because of that, it can look aged and even a little dirty if you're not careful with the lighting. So if you want white walls, you're either going to be spending a lot of item slots on custom lighting to keep Snow White looking nice, or you're going to be spending a lot of gil or even real money on pure white dyes. Now, if you're a fan, it's worth it, but if you're decorating your house on a smaller budget, then color is actually the cheaper way to go. And you're going to get a more unique home as a result, because just like real life interior design, neutrals are popular and are far and away the most common housing design you're going to see. Now that being said, designing with color takes a little more work to get right than neutrals do, because again, neutrals go with everything, hence the term. So if you're new to color theory, it can be a little daunting. If that's you and you need help deciding on a color palette for your home, I would recommend Coolers, and I'll have a link in the description. Coolers has a bunch of palettes you can explore, and you can even upload a photo to dissect a color palette from. So if there's a color you love in Final Fantasy XIV, maybe you have a glam that has just the right aesthetic you want for your house, you can take a screenshot of that and you can find colors to pair it with through Coolers. Generally speaking, what works for most people is sticking to two neutrals like white and brown or white and black, and then 2 to 3 colors that complement each other. In my case, I broke that rule, but I still think it turned out harmonious anyway. But how did I achieve that? Well, lavender purple is the dominant color in the living room, so finding colors on the color wheel that work well with it was the way to go for me. I chose blue for soft accents like the couch and the reading nook by the fireplace because blue and purple are analogous to each other, and that means they sit next to each other on the color wheel. However, we associate coziness with warmth, and blue and purple are traditionally considered cold colors. So to inject that warmth, I used a purple with warm undertones for the accent pillows on the couch, and reds, yellows, and oranges in places like the rug and in the plants you'll see around the room. Those warm colors are triadic with both blue and purple, so they all go together very well, despite mixing like 5 colors in a single room. And if this is sounding a little confusing to you, it's okay. I'm going to link the color wheel explanations in the description below as well, so that you can read up on those in your own time. But I do want to emphasize, you sincerely, truly do not need to think that hard about your color choices. If a pair of colors looks great to you, then you should use them together. End of story. Taste is subjective, and a lot of what we consider to be compatible color palettes are rooted in Western aesthetics, and you do not have to be beholden to them. On top of that, it's your house. Break some rules like I did. I'm just pointing out in detail why these colors work together. Moving on to the kitchen. Now, remember when I said the hallway being white and the rooms colorful drew your eye to the doorways? Well, I still wanted that effect when traversing from the living room doorway into the kitchen, so I reversed the color scheme. Blue is the dominant color with purple accents. And also, do you remember when I said in the living room I'd have to layer more walls? You'll be seeing that in the footage soon. In Final Fantasy XIV, we can't change the size of objects like, say, in The Sims. So the purple-white rectangular partitions I used in the living room that are against the hallway ended up creeping into the kitchen. And I can't change that. And I couldn't just cover it with a blue partition because it would be the exact same problem, just the other way. I would have this weird blue side to the living room. So I had to get creative here, and what I ended up doing was I layered wood slat partitions dyed blue to create a more narrow wall that covered up just the space used in the kitchen. Now, the different shades were actually a happy accident. I liked the strip textured effect it made, so I left it. And on that note, wood slat partitions are your best friends for projects like these. They're skinny, they're narrow, they dye well, and can be layered to make any size surface you want. The unfortunate downside is they're kind of item slot hungry if you do this. You can see how many I used in the video. Originally in the kitchen, I wanted to try a technique called color drenching. Now, what is that? Color drenching is when you paint most or all of the surfaces in a room in one single color and hue of that color. The theory behind it is it makes the space feel bigger and creates a relaxing vibe similar to monochromatic designs. Since the living room throws 5 different colors together, I thought it would be a nice break for the kitchen to tone that down, which is why the cabinets and the walls are dyed similar blues. That being said, I couldn't go all in as much as I could have because in Final Fantasy XIV, at least before the Dawntrail update, details like textures got lost. Too lost. The effect was a little too good and things kind of just looked really flat. It doesn't help that my heart is biased towards contrast anyway, so I made the walls two-toned instead with some white to help break things up a little bit. Otherwise, most of the supporting accent colors are in the faux window at the end of the kitchen, and that was done to make it the focus of the room. I stuck to the same purples, yellows, and reds found in the living room, even a little bit of orange, but it's in much smaller amounts to give the eyes some rest. And speaking of rest, finally, the bedroom. I didn't actually have much of a plan for this room other than I wanted to carry the color scheme I had been using throughout the house. So purples, blues, white trims, and warm wood tones. And I wanted this window and the cozy reading chair to be visible from the hallway. So I picked my colors accordingly. The only real difference here was playing with shades. I used a darker blue for the walls than I did with the kitchen to help make it feel more like a relaxing bedroom. And I injected some pinks to soften the reds I used. Because it's a bedroom, we want our bedroom soft and relaxing. Which, side note, I adore the Tonberry rug and I wish I had more reasons to use it. Maybe I'll plan to build around it one day, but it's a fantastic rug. But that brings me to one final topic I wanted to touch on regarding color, and that's wallpaper. And you'll see me use wallpaper as an accent wall behind the bed. Wallpaper is fantastic. You get so much color and character and texture in a single item slot that cannot be replicated. So if you like any of the wallpapers in the game, I encourage you to experiment with them. That being said, there is a reason they're not used a lot, and that's because they're locked to the various blank partitions in the game. And that's a real shame, because those partitions are really thick, and as you've probably noticed watching this video, you kind of need thin walls to pull off certain housing tricks. However, I do think it would be interesting to try creating custom wallpaper though. I've already done something like that with the house I built for my friend Wisty and the housing community creates their own rugs and wall art now anyway. Try saying that 5 times fast, wall art now. So I don't think it's out of the question. It would just be very item slot intensive. And that's it. That's the house, and a peek into how I design my houses with colors in mind. In summary, if you want to build a house in Final Fantasy XIV with lots of color, it's best to have a layout or a floor plan in mind before you start. Pick 1 or 2 colors you'll base all your choices around, and I strongly recommend you pick your favorite colors for this. You will be so much happier with the end result if you do. And finally, when in doubt, use a color wheel or a palette generator like Coolers to find the perfect pairs for your favorite colors. And it doesn't hurt to check out other designers for inspiration. Shameless self-promotion time. I personally love to build in-game homes with lots of color and plants, so if you enjoyed my work today, you might want to check out some of my other builds. I'll have a playlist on screen for you to watch. And if you'd like to support my channel, you can join my free Patreon community where I post updates for ongoing projects. I design houses and video games, and I'm learning how to draw and documenting that journey, so I'd love to have you along for both of those things with me. So until next time, see you then!